Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Minahan and her panel of guests bring you leading-edge astrology conversations through a journey of soul growth patterns connecting astrology's energetic cycles. Get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello everybody, this is Sue Minahan of Talk Cosmos, and we have insightful conversations awaken your consciousness. And today is July 2nd, just before the July 4th, of course, and we have archetypal symbols. It's a panel that's every first. No, it's not. It's Planet Buzz. I'm going ahead of myself. It's Planet Buzz. It's the first Sunday of every month. And our subject today will be the Leo Venus star point. And our subject is actually called Bold Hearts. Leo is fiery and Venus is many things. It's a wide archetype, actually, that we attract in our desires. And we'll tell more about that. And the Venus star point is when the Venus and the sun meet at the same degree. And this is a cycle that happens, and we'll go into a little more depth about it. But it happens initially at the retrograde. It's during an 8-year process when it reconjuncts at the same sign. But it also has a moment in between at 4 years. It makes a beautiful pattern. There's many things. There's a book. Arielle Guttman is the one who first devised the Venus star point and Venus star rising, a marvelous book with all kinds of good information. Well, with all this said, generally the sun hears the language of the heart's alignment with Venus. It's powerful. It's been going on since eons, and we're focusing in on it. So we are now ready for Planet Buzz.
Focusing on planetary ecliptic orbital cycles and planetary pairs called synodic cycles connecting the planets at the same degree that begin our relationship, these are the members of Planet Buzz.
I'm Sue Minahan, the founder of Talk Cosmos, an eclectic evolutionary astrologer, consultant, certified color energy life coach, vice president of the Washington State Astrological Association, member of Kepler Astrology Toastmaster Club, of a Dwarf Planet University diploma and AA with music degree. I love mythology, philosophizing, collaboration. I'm an artist, writer, a perpetual student of life. Yes, and Dan Beck is our wonderful guest today. He is a former practicing astrologer who now devotes his time to exploring theory and the philosophy of astrology. And you can find him at innermakeup.net and also offline astrology. And he's lectured many times at OPA, a wide scan which you can see here. And he's a columnist, a horoscope writer. He's published in the Career Astrology magazine. He had a podcast where he too interviewed people, Star Love Podcast. And he works with a special group called Beyond Literacy, and it helps adults. He also does solo and choral classical singing. You know, music is like astrology. It's the vibrational sphere of the world. So thank you very much, Dan. It's great to have you again. Okay. Well, we're doing this. I know that you studied with Arielle. And
yes. And, I do recommend Arielle's work, and I'm saying that of my own volition. I went through the Venus Star Point certification. I did an immersion course with her, and there's a wonderful group of people who have studied with her. So it is, a community of sorts. And, I'm still involved with that. And as you said, thank you for having me on and putting this all together. Again, I'm a little less involved in astrology these days. It's why it's offline astrology. The main interest still is to, if I can serve and if I'm invited to, wonderful shows such as yours, I'm happy to oblige. And I do still help astrologers on their journey because I have many things in the recesses of my mind about astrology because I've been involved engaging with it as a subject for many years, and also, many people who are involved in astrology. So,
Well, what I
yeah.
love what you're saying here is really how we began in a sense. Well, I say in a sense because it's been going, Talk Cosmos has been going on since 2018, and it
Mm,
is archetypal. And when
mm,
I think of archetypal, it's like astrology isn't just the matter of looking at the chart and figuring it
mm,
out. It applies to everything in life.
mhm,
So to get back involved with some life forms applies it. It's really like practice to theory or theory to practice,
mm,
So it's
right.
strong. Maybe we
Mhm,
can have those slides.
mhm,
Thank you. There's so many ways to start this, and I thought for people not, understanding the many frameworks of this Venus star point, that would begin just explaining a little bit about Venus itself. It's an inner planet, meaning it's between us and the sun. There's only two planets, it's Mercury and Venus, and we call it a personal planet. And there is very much, and to recognize too that our audience spans the YouTube visual people, which have a good number, and also the podcast. So pardon podcast, we try to make this as succinct as possible because you don't read everything and I don't read everything on the slides. But for those people that have the slides, they can always review and go back and gather that information. But it's a long legacy, isn't it, with Venus? It wasn't just yesterday. She's been revered everywhere, Dan.
yeah, absolutely. And um, you know, as you get back in the centuries, people were not as divorced from the daily observation of the sky. And this Venus synodic cycle, again, synodic, if you think of like a synod, it's the sun with
The
Venus.
meeting, yes.
Yeah, and how they sort of dance with each other, as you will, if you will. Um, these cycles were very important to a lot of ancient cultures. So, and again, this is all from the geocentric standpoint, but there are a lot of proportions that we can observe that emerge both from our geocentric standpoint, but also from a heliocentric standpoint, as far as how the Earth and Venus move around the sun, but together, all sorts of beautiful proportions related to the Fibonacci sequence and the golden section. Different, as you talk about harmony and music, different harmonics really that are involved, and special aspects that are involved with the Venus synodic cycle that a lot of astrologers don't always look at, namely the quintile, the biquintile, which again, those get into the golden section and Fibonacci, sequence proportion. So yeah, there's
It's
a lot.
it's very true because her
Hmm.
pattern itself
Hmm.
spans, and I'm not sure if I have a slide exactly, because on this one I was mentioning that Venus, what is Venus? Venus
Yeah.
represents
It,
the path of beauty, love, war, attraction,
yeah.
desire, our consciousness of pleasure. But in Leo retrograde would be like rebirthing that joyful self-expression, we could say.
Yeah, and it's important to remember, especially as what Arielle Guttman brought to bear with Venus, is that the Venus star point is different than one's natal Venus in the chart. So the Venus star
Mm.
point is the Sun Venus conjunction, and the way you locate it in your chart, and you can just look this. If you just look up online, find my Venus star point. It's the Sun Venus conjunction that happens prior to your birth, or there's an exception right on your birth, maybe a week later. And there are a lot of reasons for the exception week later, but for most of you listening, it's going to be the Sun Venus conjunction prior to your birth. So you can look that up. And it's, as you say, it's a very heart centered place in the chart.
Mm.
You look at the Sun Venus conjunction and whatever the ruler of that is. So interestingly, we're dealing with Leo now. So it's Sun Venus. So Leo is, the sun is in, its domicile. So the sun's very comfy, if you will. But it is a place, really where you can live by heart, express yourself. It can be talent. If you're, for people who are, whatever stage of delineating charts or interpreting charts, I find you do your kind of regular delineations. You're like, You know what? I think there's this thing that just it comes down to, and somebody you'll be like, "Oh yes, that's it," or somebody will be like, it's sort of the seam that ties things together in a chart.
Mm.
So that's how, if for all of you who are listening, you can find the Venus star point in your birth chart. A little bit different than the natal Venus, whereby most of you will have Sun and Venus somewhere else. And again, Venus does not ever get that far from the Sun. Oh dear, I forget how many degrees it is, but
Well,
Venus,
it is
yeah,
true because the
yeah,
Mercury, I'm thinking about that too.
Mercury
Mercury only
synodic
gets
cycle
28 degrees, but I think Venus gets
with
like
some 40
46.
degrees. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think right.
46 or something like that. So is she kind of
Sorry.
reaches out, no, it's okay, and
Right.
comes
Yeah.
back. It's part of that gorgeous cycle.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there
Mhm.
is a lot to add, and it's not just linear here. So pardon,
Yeah.
because I was
And
just thinking
just so
when
people
you
can, yeah, so you can really just connect, because it kind of gets into sky stuff that we're tuning into today, I think. But so for right now, if you go out in the evening, the sun will set and Venus will still be there. But
it is.
as now, when Venus turns retrograde, the sun will be setting, and each night, Venus, so sun sets, each night, Venus will get closer to the sun and then disappear. And then Venus will keep going, and then Venus will rise before the sun, um, in the coming months as you get into September. So Venus goes back and forth from this evening star, as we're dealing with now, and then morning star come, September-ish. So it's like evening star, morning star, evening star, morning star. And
Yeah, that
this
goes back. I brought this
yes,
slide
and
up
then the
because
Inanna,
with
yes,
Inanna, it's that
yes,
descent that,
yes.
yeah.
And go ahead if you want. This is the so that they really, so they saw it as a descent into the underworld, and then it's this 40-day retrograde. So 40 is obviously a very significant number. Many, you talk about many traditions, so like you think of Moses wandering in the desert, so it can be a good time to meditate. It's very powerful though, because when Venus reemerges in the morning star, take for example, in the early, some of the Mesoamerican cultures, I guess specifically the Aztecs, they really
Definitely. Or
felt,
Mayan.
yeah, they really felt Venus appearing as the morning star was very powerful. Or in, I guess in Greek culture, it would be the Pandemos Venus. Arielle writes about this. So
There's
it's,
different names.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Because it
So
was,
the morning star can be really intense. I think we should really talk about that. And this, just briefly note, if anything, that the morning star can be really intense, and that's why oftentimes people recommend meditation. But you can really, it's one last thing. There's the concept in Hellenistic astrology of the Dorfiri, or the spear bearer. So Venus, when Venus becomes a morning star, leads out in front of the sun. So it's like bam, Venus comes up in the morning and then the sun. So it's like Venus kind of leads out in front of the sun. It's very, very powerful. Yeah, so it's, yeah, there you get it, love and war. I mean, all is fair.
yeah, exactly.
So
Well,
yeah,
Dan,
yeah.
really having thought a great deal too about Leo and about
Mm-hmm.
Venus and
Mm-hmm.
this whole archetype, we need to realize with media, it's always that love, kindness, popcorn, cotton candy type of attitude, a little bit. But reality is, if we have strong desires and intentions, that can become like we're almost like in mythology, she and our Mars get together, which is our causes. And if we have strong defense and causes, we can become quite warlike. It's like, yes, depending.
Yeah.
So it's the whole
Right.
spectrum. It's the whole
Absolutely.
spectrum.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to remember too, that I'm thinking that with this, that because it's retrograde, that's our opportunity to kind of review and get what creative things have we left undone,
And again, look, so you want to look, for those of you who are looking at your charts, you want to see, I believe the region that Venus will be retrograding over is like 28 Leo to 12 Leo. So you want to see where that's happening in your chart. And I believe the conjunction happens at 18 or 19 Leo. And the thing that's special, if you will, about this Venus retrograde, in my estimation, is that Venus will actually start retrograding at 28 Leo.
We've got
So
that in these charts.
yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
I'll bring
why
that up in a
that's
second. Yeah.
significant because since Sun Venus conjunctions started happening in Leo in the 80s, and then it wasn't happening for like 150 years, but then it
Well,
started
here it
to
is.
yeah, but it was starting, the retrograde was starting in Virgo, but this time is the first time it's going to start in Leo. So again, 28 Leo to 12 Leo.
That's
So it's
very
really
important.
Leo. It's very Leo.
It
This is
is
really the first kind of pure Leo Venus retrograde, if you will.
because Virgo is, as a archetype, just for those remembering, we're trying to perfect and purify what we are through that manifestation so that we can join other people in the Libra connected partnership. But if it's Leo, it's about what are we manifesting? And here I do have a chronological line because there are charts about the whole 100-year spectrum, because it stays, a Venus star point cycle is over 104 years, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, it's like
long.
90 to 100 some. Yeah,
but here we have your timeline, just to focus, because I know I devised the timeline. I mean,
I know right. Go for it.
I mean the slides, and trying to keep up. So I apologize to people and to you. No, sorry. It's just I'm trying to explain why I'm presenting this now, because you kindly brought up this timeline, and it's really true. I'm glad you brought up that wide 20, it's almost 20, between 12 and 28 is 14 degrees, and then it could be over. I mean, over, it's because vibrationally it connects with earlier. So let's say it's just being even conservative, it would be 10 or 8 until 30. That's almost the whole. If you have anything in fixed degrees, practically, you're going to get touched. But this is through the heart. And so this is that astrological timeline.
Yeah, and I think it really can be a beautiful heart-centered expression, and to live by heart. It's because again, it's the combination of Sun Venus when it hits the conjunction. So the Sun likes to be there, classically, and then Venus is kind of like, oh great, I can express this way. Now the kind of, we can be I don't want to say Pollyanna-ish, but the flip side can be, wild, I don't know, like it can be over the top or just gaudy. I don't know.
Oh,
there are, because if you bring up archetypes, and archetypes can express in many different ways, but it is how is the expression being expressed.
That's right. That's exactly right, because there's no limit to it. It's like your own description. And I will say that today, July 2nd, is just 1 degree away from what the actual Venus star point degree is, because it is at 20 degrees Leo 28. So it's like 20 and a half. But as of the 1st, it was at that degree. So this is really significant. And when Venus begins going backwards, won't be until the 22nd. So we have 3 weeks, we could say. And then there's this whole path, as we call. So from June 19th until October 6th, 7th, we're in this whole field of like what was happening, what is happening, and how are we redesigning our drama, our gift on our stage.
and I would just say it is, definitely a lot of people say to meditate and all this, and that I think that's all fine and good, but it can be a powerful time to take action, again, because the morning star, even though when planets are retrograde, they can lose their sort of natural significations, if you will, or their typical significations. Retrograde planets can be very powerful. And different people talk about that, like your retrograde planets, your inner superpower. So it actually can be a time, while revisioning, to also take. I know that's not necessarily the common.
No, I like it.
Yeah,
no,
but
I'm listening.
I'm making, and I never. I'm not dictatorial. Like people never have to believe what I say, but I think it does bear, noting that it can be a powerful time to initiate some stuff. And I know people think retrogrades are not, but it just, if you think of like Venus is leading out in front of the sun, it's really, if with the
That's true.
after the retrograde becomes the morning star. It's very powerful. And then, I think, Sue, you'd probably have a lot of insight into this with the polarity between Leo and Aquarius. I don't know if you want to get into that, but that is, that's part and parcel of it,
Sure.
because of course Leo is self-expression and then Aquarius is the group. So it's a very natural polarity, like you and the group. And how's that going to
And
work?
being authentically yourself,
Yeah. Yeah. And like,
within that, it's a beautiful.
and you're gonna, and that's one last thing, that's gonna be a story in the coming years, because the Venus star point will be opposing Pluto in Aquarius. So they're going to be, what's said to be mutually applying. So they're going to be coming into an opposition. Yeah, so it really, again, it's a very powerful polarity. So a lot of opportunity there too.
I thank you so much, Dan. Generally, here I put on a slide because it started in 1988 and it's going all the way, well, on the next slide. But right now it's the 13th of August. But excuse my frog here. But anyway, it was last retrograde in 2015. I have a chart. And also 4 years ago at, very close degrees. Yes.
Right, and just so people understand what this is so you see 88, it says August 28, 88 to 29 Leo, Leo D, which is direct. So that was Leo, the Venus was an evening star applying to the sun and then conjoining. And again, because from our view here on Earth, Venus moves quicker than the sun, and also heliocentrically, because Venus takes 25 or something days to rotate around the sun, and Earth is 365. But it alternates every 4 years between evening star, morning star from sign. So it's 9.5 months that the sun and Venus conjoin, but based on the sign itself. So if we're talking about one sign, in this case Leo, it's every 4 years, and then it phases out into the next sign. So we're gonna, in like the late 21st century, we're gonna hit, it'll go into Cancer.
I have here, it's 2099, so it actually goes at
2099. It's like Prince will have to come back. 1999 will be 2099. Yes.
Amazing.
So and I know that's like somewhat complicated, but basically the thing to remember: every 9.5 months, the Sun and Venus conjoin, and then for the sign that you're going to look at, for the same sign, it's every 4 years, alternating between, evening star, morning star, evening star, morning star.
There is that rhythm.
Leo.
There is that rhythm.
And that's what you're talking about, Sue, these rhythms, the harmonies.
It's good. And there's, it's very good, because it is a whole dimension. But going back, I know that last time, because Dan was on here, I'm trying to remember exactly the date, but you were on just earlier, I think in March.
It was June 4th.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, June.
Yes.
It wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't. Time. Yeah. What do we know? So I came up. That's right, because we're talking about the Capricorn. That's right, about Pluto going into Capricorn, and you brought up the Capricorn Venus star point. So at any rate, I brought up Venus star point 1988, because that's when this cycle began. And it does begin, as we mentioned perhaps on a slide, but didn't bring up. It begins at the last degree, and then it goes retrograde like the nodes. So it started at 29 degrees. But at any rate, I was looking at what was happening, just a few things. And that might be indicative of Leo and the Venus star point. But the Berlin Wall fell down. There was that issue about baby M that I totally forgot about, but it was a surrogate mother that then started, where the parents, not the surrogate mother, ended up with the child. So it has to do a lot about, that's birth, that's babies, childhood like Leo. And then also the birth of a galaxy. It was witnessed by astronomers. And then and then I have 2015, which was the last Venus star point that was retrograde, because as you indicated, it's every 4 years, part of that whole cycle. But that, I remember that so clearly. That was, and here we had, well, not to be political, but our economic growth was was one of the highlights, because the unemployment, so that's growth, that's like birth, you could say. The Paris Climate Agreement was also action on, and same-sex marriage was legalized, the LGBT rights in that landmark ruling, and also space, because that's love, and space. Scott Kelly, I remember he went up there, that was in space. So I was trying to follow through with that space idea. I don't know how well, Scott Kelly.
Well, that is interesting with the space. See, I didn't know that. But the kind of launch of the morning star, if you will, again, because when Venus retrogrades, conjuncts the sun, and then reemerges as a morning star, that's what I was saying, it like leads out, it kind of, so that's actually interesting. And then one, because again, this is, the 8 years ago, the Venus retrograde. But this, I had looked back in the 18th century, where this degree of the Sun-Venus conjunction, which we're going to be hitting in August, the Sun and Venus will conjoin at the same degree of longitude. So again, you won't see Venus, because again, it will be moving into the Sun, as it were. But it was actually... there was a case in Britain that really initiated the, okay, we're going to be on a break. Should we, there you go. A case that actually led to the end of slavery in Britain. So that is really wonderful that happened.
Freedom. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so that, that's certainly a great thing.
Liberating from the heart, the freedom. You're talking about the polarity of Aquarius. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dan. We'll come back. This is Venus star point. Here we can get rid of the slides there, Nathan. Yeah, thank you. And thank you. We have Dan Beck. And this is July 2nd. And thank you so much. Stay tuned. We'll figure out what is happening in August 13th with this heart-centered energy.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. Currently, we are in the period of Cancer. By leaving a cycle based on connecting mental communication to the external, the energy of Cancer involves emotions, which create our personal story through our emotional associations and attachments. As a cardinal water sign that is nurturing, Cancer needs to process emotions in one's own internal rhythm of cycles in order to complete an evolution.
This is Martha Norwalk, every Sunday morning beginning at 9 a.m. Thanks in part to Natasha Venter at angelicclarifications.com, we cover the world of animals. This week, July 9th, it's BEST, Neuroenergetic Balancing, Rasmussen Reset, and Energy Code Center.
Talk Cosmos brings you leading-edge astrological conversations with hour-long programs each week on KKNW. The show goes live every Sunday from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on Facebook and YouTube, along with daily chats throughout the week on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you click like and subscribe buttons so you can get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or, if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. So, grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
Find our app in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and take us with you wherever you go. Alternative Talk AM 1150.
Here we are again. Okay, and I'm with, Dan Beck. with offline astrology. So I think you said you're going, this is the moment just to say, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah,
for whatever
it's
reason?
still innermakeup.net, which is the website. But we talked about this last time. I'm not doing readings for individuals at this point. I'm still old clients, but what I am doing is I counsel individual astrologers, just casually, but also I'm open to the public for that. So if you're, on your astrological journey, you're just like, what do I do? House systems, the history of astrology, the philosophy of astrology, really treating it seriously as a subject and reflecting upon who you are as an astrologer, what astrology is, trying to define it as a subject, and how do you define it as a subject? All of those questions. How does science look at astrology? What have some of those battles been like, religion and astrology, and just trying to navigate those waters, because I think when people start learning astrology, a lot of times, they just start launching into charts, running charts, learning techniques without looking at some of the broader contextual issues surrounding astrology, which
That's
can be
good service. Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
and it's I think I was somewhat fortunate that I had it early on, although there is a kind of counter argument. Sometimes it's, you don't want to rock the boat too much, you know what I mean? Because it can be paralysis by analysis as well. So,
It's good.
yeah.
It's
So,
good. Okay. Thank you, Nathan. Well, as we were talking about this whole cycle, because I know we're both eager to look at the charts and just figure out, well, what kind of energies are happening in consciousness. But meanwhile, there was this Venus star point, meaning the sun and Venus conjunct at the same degree 4 years ago, which is just a degree away from what it is now. And that was in 2019. So along with that idea, that themes, again, space came up and law. And space was the first image of a black hole, which is amazing, which is also like a new birth for us. And the first all-female, Leo is the goddess Venus, spacewalk. And then there was the first an impeachment. And actually, Denver legalized magic mushrooms, and in Alabama, an anti-abortion bill. So these things have persisted forward. But
yeah, and again, because so people, and it can be sort of complex to talk about these things just verbally, but again, a Sun-Venus conjunction in a specific sign, most of the time there are 5 conjunctions happening, 5 signs active. So Sun-Venus conjunction in 5 signs. So right now we're about to phase out of Scorpio, but essentially we're moving into what in the next coming decades will be Pisces. But for we're dealing with essentially right now Leo, Capricorn, Libra, Aries, and Gemini. But so that's what and then you get your star. That's what you get, a 5-pointed star. So and it spends, again, what you're saying, so it spends about 100 years per sign, and then it goes out for 150. So Leo was out, it phased in the 80s, as you say, and it had been out for 150 years or so. So the last time this Sun-Venus conjunction that's coming up this summer hit at this degree, I was looking into it, there was that case in Britain right around the Sun-Venus conjunction that led to the abolishment of slavery. This was in the late 18th century. There's also a king, King Gustav, in one of the Scandinavian countries. A very interesting king. There was actually a coup that he initiated. And it was sort of gets into issues of benevolent dictators and, issues of monarchy, which is very Leo. And
definitely.
He was an interesting character. He really was a huge patron of the arts. He was very interesting in his intervention in markets, in the marketplace, and whether it's open trade or tariffs. He was actually very much battling with the aristocracy and was very much of the underclasses. So it's a very interesting with like people sort of wanting, a monarch versus versus
Like
democracy,
now.
but also plutocracy and aristocracy, sometimes democracy. It's not really democracy, it's more just plutocrats. And there was a lot of action in the markets up and down, it seemed like, which I don't know if you could correlate that anymore.
Well,
with
it's just Venus.
It's
Venus
always
Taurus,
I know.
value,
It's
resources.
I know. It's hard to markets with any markets are so crazy anyways. It's like, what do you?
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't. Some of these themes really are Leo, as you say, like self-expression, freedom. Royalty with King Gustav. So, and this is a very interesting chart. What do you think? So
Hey, there's a lot of action right off the bat. There's going to be big action when we consider, and it goes right into that whole realm of, well, a lot to do with changing our dynamics of relationships, but how are we going to do that? Well, it is through, let's see, what do I have? We have, now in this chart, for those people that are looking at it, this happens to be August 13th. And it is located on the East Coast because we have our capital there. Canada has their capital there. At least it shows the nature for the United States, represents that. And it happens to be at 7 in the morning, 7:16 and 25 seconds in the morning. So at any rate, but what I'm pointing out is the sun, it's so close. Look at that. It's... Anyway, but the arrow shows where the sun and the moon are, not sun and the moon, the sun and Venus are conjunct at 20 degrees and 28 minutes of Leo. So, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's somebody. So if people are looking at, thanks for putting that arrow there. But you have the sun, and then sun conjoined Venus at that 20 degrees, so there's the same degree of longitude. But because Venus is retrograding, again, Venus will be moving into the morning star phase. So again, it's this kind of Venus is beginning to lead out in front of the sun. And the other thing that I think is interesting for people who use fixed stars, what you have nearly exactly by degree, you have 0 degrees, which is the fixed star Regulus, which is a very
Virgo,
kind of,
a Virgo.
yeah, very, excuse me if I misspoke. Yeah, the 0 right. Virgo is Regulus, which is interesting because that happened like 5 or 6 years ago. The fixed star Regulus moved into Virgo, which is a very different kind of royal energy. You get into sort of the servant leader as opposed to, the royalty. So
yeah, it's not about your manifestation. It's more on how do you...
It's very interesting. And then the as people might know, the interception of Sun, Venus, Leo in the 12th house. So, that's interesting. There's a lot you could talk about the 12th house. I mean, in a more classical sense, that would not be seen as benefic. But you studied with Maurice Fernandez, right? Yeah, he talks about the 12th house. It actually can be a service-oriented house, like what you give, and you kind of submit to something way wider than yourself. And this would be a more modern.
It's the collective.
Yeah,
it is the collective,
right?
And it's the unconscious. And in a sense, just to mention about that in reference to Maurice, he talks about it on his website, but that it is where one can find a fame in the sense, not of a Leo sense of fame, like on stage and raw, but you can connect with the general population. It can be very powerful, but it is internal and also.
Yeah. And it's how does, again, this is the theme we were talking about before. How does your personal expression connect with the collective? Now, there's a subtle difference between that and Aquarius, but we're talking, when you're talking the 12th house, that's like, how do you connect to the collective in a cafe in France if you're living into the United States? Like really not necessarily the immediacy of your community, which would be the 11th house. And it's interesting, you have a beautiful moon in Cancer Although it's interesting, it's a waning moon, so it does speak to me of, it's this balsamic phase, so of a letting go. There's kind of, it's a very, you know, not negative, but polarized kind of, it's like you express, but let go.
It's like, what do we let go?
Yeah,
That
like
could be it. What is getting in our way?
Yeah, it's like retrograde should go inward, but wow, it's this powerful morning star. So it is, it's an interesting chart. It's kind of, and then the sort of the integration of the Leo with Virgo. So how do we express something but give that? So it's more of a gift as opposed to like me, and maybe the me people get in trouble. It's 12th house.
It could be very intuitive too. Yes.
Well, that's true. Oh, well, there you go. Like
intuitive.
the sort of expressive that is more, of sort of something that just comes through you as opposed to like a conscious expression.
And the birth thing, the true birth
yes,
thing,
yeah, and
within the womb.
And again, because I really do like a lot of Maurice's stuff, the movement of moving into your ascendant, so the Leo to the the Virgo, so the self-expression to the service Virgo, so the moving into the ascendant. Interesting.
Yeah,
and then surprises because the Uranus, and this is essentially Trump's chart. I mean, see, I think it's like 29 or 28 Leo, but then so it's a different.
It's a Leo rising. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
And I have here the first degree. So here it was. Now I'm trying to remember how I did this. So here's Venus on just a few days ago. So today is the second, right? Happy birthday to those people that have birthdays.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're close at that degree. So this right now is the energy that we're working with. Although the moon, of course, has moved into Leo. And so, but it's on that path. Go ahead.
It's interesting. I was reading some Jyotish stuff earlier today. Actually, Ronnie Gale Dreyer's work, and I think she's just extraordinary. But there's a concept in Jyotish about whether planets they like each other, they don't like each other, or they're kind of neutral to each other. And it's interesting. Actually, Mars and Venus are kind of neutral towards each other. So I get it's quite interesting. I think this is, if I may, Sue, this is kind of your spirit. Yeah. Like the evolutionary, what do we make of this? What do we do? It's so there's kind of, if we're talking about the rising of, Venus and Mars, what do we do with this? And Mars and Venus, they're kind of cool with each other. What do we do with these energies? It's not so much a hard rendering of a judgment, in an evolutionary sense, I guess, if I may. So,
well, adding another side to things too, in vibrational, the two together, like tactile, they like to have a product. I mean, they like to do a hands-on energy thing.
Yes.
So,
and I do have to say this, and this is because Eris, I think, gets misunderstood. So you have Eris just past culmination. Now Eris gets the rap as being a troublemaker.
At the top.
Yeah, right there. So that's it's the Aries. Kind of the sort of Mars turned downward, if you will.
Yeah, with an arrow.
So that you see the MC. Eris, she gets the troublemaker rap, but remember, she was disinvited to the wedding and she sort of exposed the problems of everybody else. Yes. And so just think of that. She was denied love, okay? And then yes, I know. And I really have to get this in. And then Paris chooses love because he chooses Aphrodite. That's the myth. The goddesses compete for his love, and he chooses love. So it's like love denied at the onset. So now there's a book called Eris, and it was written in the 1920s, but it gets into a young woman named Eris, and she is living in upstate New York, but she goes into Manhattan and she finds her way and becomes an actress, and it kind of upends everybody, but it's good for them in the end, and she stays true to her talent.
Yes.
So I actually think Eris is like, look, you've got to, there can be a denial of love, but it can also be, yeah, you're going your own way. It might upend things, but it'll be good for everybody in the end.
That's it.
So
It's inclusive
yes.
exclusion.
So I
The
really,
tip.
I think we really got to rethink Eris a little bit, not just say, oh, she's the troublemaker, because there's a little
I
bit more
agree.
nuance to it where it's like, well, hold on, she was disinvited, and that actually caused the problem. And then the goddesses, it showed them they're not always so perfect. And then Paris ends up choosing love because he chooses Aphrodite. So you have love that's denied and then love that's chosen in the end.
It's
And
like,
that's
what
not,
is real love? Love
yeah, and also,
needs
and
to
again,
be
I would,
inclusive, not
yeah, and I would,
exclusive.
right, and I would say again, the talent. Eris is very talented, and she acts essentially with impunity. She doesn't get in trouble for it. So
She didn't
Eris is a
ask.
very. I actually had a client one time. I don't want to cut me off. I'm rambling on too much,
No.
but I had a client. She actually was an actress, and she was kind of getting into trouble on set, not because of herself, but I was like, look, you just got to follow your talent and your heart. And she started getting more roles, but it did cause some trouble. But that was the other people, so just for people listening, I think
It's a
there's
good
a way.
thing you're bringing
Yeah,
this up, because
yeah.
actually too, it's a little wide, but there's that energetic
It's a
flow of
trine.
energy.
Yeah,
It's
you
a
got the
trine.
trine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we are listening to this
yeah,
inspiration. And in Aries,
yeah,
of course, is to be ourselves. It's
yeah.
to walk away from that fear. But I also am a proponent of Eris. That's
No, I love
Eris,
it.
folks,
Yeah,
because I feel that she really, all she did was say, hey, I'm part of this deal. And
right,
what are you guys thinking anyway?
right.
And it was up to the rest. And she didn't say, oh, she didn't prescribe what they were doing. She just
No,
simply gave you an option. Like, what's your
right.
choice?
Yeah, and I the only thing I'll say with people with Eris, that she is very powerful. So I say when you're dealing with charts and Eris in the chart and Eris is an archetype, just know when you pull that trigger, you're probably going to get off the hook, because she acts with impunity. She doesn't suffer any consequences. So there is still the group, and you got to know when you're dealing with Eris, it's very powerful energy. So it's
She's
really.
been on my North Node for the longest time and just
There
moved
you
a
go,
degree
Sue.
away from it. Yeah, but it
Yeah,
was
it's
24.
very powerful. Eris is very, very. So I tread carefully with Eris because even though I'm very pro Eris, it's one of the archetypes that when you really get in touch with Eris, you can really do well, but other people can suffer consequences. So just to take
I
that
think
into
I
account.
forgot to put her in here, actually, but with all that
No, it should be.
said,
Eris has been because of the
should be at the North
very.
Node. It should be right up there at the North
Yes. Oh, well,
Node.
that's because we have the nodes, which you really could give us insight to. The nodes are shifting into Aries.
Well,
and Eris,
next week we
man.
have
Yeah.
Kay, and actually it's not next week, but in 2 weeks on July 16th, Kay Taylor, the president of Organization of Professional Astrology, is going to help understand what these nodes are. It's for relationship. It is really, isn't all of life a relationship in some way? Although we've been working with relationship with Taurus, and we're still working with it. We're at the tail end of Taurus and Scorpio.
I would just say a little, I don't know, like a plug for Kay, but because I did the consulting training with her, she's really good with healing. So I don't know if y'all are listening, kind of, she might bring this up, but tune in on that level. So it's like to how do you heal through the nodes? Even if that's, I don't know if that's not something she's saying, but
it's absolutely huge because that is evolutionary. We get there through Pluto. So looking at that idea, Dan, because I like everything you say, it's all adding towards this whole conglomeration of what is this consciousness that we're working towards. But look at Pluto. Pluto now, folks, is that at 28 degrees Capricorn and is retrograde. And so in many ways, everything you've said about this Leo, nothing happens immediately. It's a whole process. But this seed point is asking us to really change to let go of maybe what because if it's in Libra, you were about to say something here, but I'll try to
No, you go. I'm totally, yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay. Because if it's in Libra, we know that if we're working with another relationship, perhaps we acquiesce too far to what their center is instead of answering to our own.
Yeah, and you look, and absolutely, and you've got squares. You've got the nodes at 27. You got the cardinals happening. You got 27 Aries, 27 Libra, and then you have Pluto 28 Capricorn, and then we've really got a Juno at 28 Cancer. So this speaks of themes, and security there for yourself. And then again, you have the Moon and part of Fortune, and the part of Fortune's very interesting because it's the distance between the Sun and the Moon. This formula is ascendant plus the Moon minus the Sun, but I always forget which formula it is, but that distance projected from the ascendant. So it's a way to kind of, in my opinion, bring together the solar and lunar energy, and it actually is lunar. So again, we're speaking of the lunar energy with the Cancer stuff. So again, the security there, it's Cancer security in yourself, relationship with authority, and Juno brings that in because Juno's in Cancer. So you've got Juno, part of Fortune, Moon, all cardinal, the nodes cardinal, which is Aries, Libra, and Pluto and Capricorn, which is relationships with authority. So powerful stuff. I mean, really,
It is. It's like cardinal wants action, a square wants action, and the universe, I'm told, loves action. It just takes one little step to start a whole period of anything. You plant a seed, it grows, you water it, etc. But here, I think checking in with that Moon, our emotions, and as it is in Cancer, of our feelings and our story. So if we tell a new story to ourselves through what our dreams and our hopes and our and I'm not trying to, that's why that can be anything, because we can have one desire of what we want to fulfill for our heart, and it can be very extreme in one way or whatever, and then change and do something else. It's all a development. It's a process.
Right. And again, going back to the lunar phase, really I'm glad this is a good chart thanks for bringing this up. But the Moon, part of Fortune, and Juno, that totally speaks of, because it's a balsamic phase. What are the relationships that you really need for security, and finding, the part of Fortune is lunar, and it can actually be very material and related to health. So, and again, that morning when the moon is before the sun comes up, it'll be a beautiful balsamic moon. It's a beautiful moon. So
That's
it's
a good point, because we can't see Venus, but we could see the moon.
See the moon, and it's a great, and it's. Classically, the 11th house it's the house of the good diamond. It depends on which house system you use, but still, it is a very fortunate house. So again, you got a lot going on, and again, because Cancer is on the cusp of the 12th, Leo intercepted Virgo, a lot of energies happening there. So it's the interceptions really it's like security, self-expression, but the clarification of that through the
really the doorway, one way, I remember Donna Cunningham or somebody, but the doorway to find intercepted is like when it's like, if you notice there, the little Leo is not on a sign in this particular quadrant house system. But with that said, maybe then it is really because in the 12th house, it's those energies beyond ourselves. And if we, and in the moon in Cancer is so sensitive to is psychic. It could we are naturally psychic people. And so if we just start going towards what isn't direct, like A to B, but be eclectic, be sensitive to symbols and to these different inspirations, will maybe release and birth something that's really powerful.
Sure, because as you say, again, the 12th house is this sort of journey into the first house. So what is birthing? And then again, the security to release things, because Moon in Cancer, that balsamic phase, which is the last phase. So I would say you all got to have your security with your social group. It's a lot of action happening. Just the Moon in Cancer on a basic level. You got to have your protective shell. You know what I mean? Just on a basic level, you know, people.
Find your group and love them dearly. I like this. Yeah. Thank you, Dan. And thanks. You're very good. Now I can see you fully and wholly. Well, I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
So it's offline astrology, and we are off into new worlds of heart and feeling, though.
Yeah. It's quite emotional and feeling. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you so much. You do a great job putting all this together.
Oh, well, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you again. Thank you. And thank you to everybody.
Thank you for joining us on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Minahan and her panel of guests connect soul growth patterns with the energetic cycles of astrology. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.